The silent stars stir. The Galactic Empire stretched across the stars, ruling thousands of worlds with an iron grip. For centuries, its power had been unchallenged. But even the strongest empires feared the unknown. In the heart of the imperial capital, inside a massive chamber of shimmering crystal walls, the High Council gathered. A faint hum of urgency filled the air as advisors, military leaders, and scholars whispered to one another. At the center of the room stood a holographic image of deep space. The sector displayed was called the Dead Zone, a place so feared that no ship had ventured near it in hundreds of years. Silence, boomed Supreme Counselor Tharvok, slamming his gavel. The chamber quieted as he leaned forward. His reptilian eyes scanned the room. "We have received a transmission from the edge of the Dead Zone." It was strange. Tharvok gestured, and a recording began to play. A crackling, distorted sound filled the chamber. It was unlike anything the Empire had heard before. At first, it was just static, but then came a deep, echoing voice. "Unknown signals detected. Fleet approaching. Proceed with caution." The recording ended abruptly. The room fell silent again, but this time it was a heavy, uneasy silence. General Ralnar, a grizzled warrior with scars across his face, stood up. This could be remnants of an old empire, perhaps a forgotten automated system. "We should investigate." "It's no automated system," interrupted a scholar. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "The signal contains patterns, intelligent patterns. This is something alive." Tharvok's voice rose again. "The Dead Zone has been quiet for centuries. It is a wasteland devoid of life. What could possibly emerge from there now?" Another council member, a thin, pale alien with elongated limbs, whispered, "Legends say the Dead Zone was once the home of a powerful civilization. Could it be?" Survivors. The chamber buzzed with uneasy murmurs. No one wanted to believe it, but the evidence was clear. Something was stirring in the Dead Zone. Something no one understood. Ralnar slammed his fist on the table. "Enough talk. We are the Galactic Empire. If there is a threat, we must face it head-on. I will assemble a fleet to investigate." "No," Tharvok said, raising a hand. "We will send a scouting party first. We cannot risk the full fleet for some ghost stories." Ralnar growled but obeyed. The council adjourned, and orders were sent to the Imperial Navy. Far from the capital, on the edge of the Dead Zone, Captain Vareen prepared his ship, the Sentinel. Vareen was young for his rank, but his crew trusted him. They knew he had sharp instincts and nerves of steel. The Sentinel was a sleek, advanced frigate equipped for exploration. As the ship approached the dark expanse of the Dead Zone, tension grew among the crew. The area was nothing like the bright, bustling regions of the Empire. It was cold, dark, and eerily silent. Stars seemed dimmer here, and the void itself felt alive, watching them. "Captain," said First Officer Kelnar, breaking the silence on the bridge. "We're detecting faint energy readings ahead." Vareen leaned forward in his chair. On screen, the main display flickered, showing a shadowy region filled with debris. At first glance, it looked like a graveyard of ancient ships. Twisted metal floated aimlessly, and shattered hulls drifted in the blackness. "Could this be remnants of an old war?" asked Kelnar. "Possibly," Vareen said, "but those energy readings suggest something else." Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared. A deep hum echoed through the hull, and the lights dimmed. "What's happening?" Vareen demanded. "It's the energy readings," replied the technician. "They're spiking. Something is moving out there." The crew fell silent, staring at the screen. From the darkness, shapes began to emerge. At first, they were hard to make out, but as they moved closer, the shapes turned into sleek, angular ships. They didn't look like anything the Empire had ever seen. Their hulls shimmered faintly, as if absorbing light, and they moved with precision and silence. "Unknown ships approaching fast," Kelnar shouted. Raise shields. Vareen ordered. Hail them. Let's see if they respond. The communications officer tried every channel, but there was no reply. The mysterious fleet continued to close in, their formation tight and deliberate. "Captain," the officer said, her voice shaking, "they're targeting us." Before Vareen could react, the lead ship fired. A brilliant beam of energy struck the Sentinel, rocking it violently. Sparks flew, and consoles exploded as the shield struggled to hold. "We're outmatched," Kelnard yelled. "Their technology is far beyond ours." Vareen gritted his teeth. Retreat. Full speed. The Sentinel turned sharply, its engines roaring as it fled the dead zone. The mysterious fleet didn't pursue, but their presence lingered like a shadow. Back at the Imperial capital, Farvak listened to Vareen's report with a grim expression. The council chamber was silent as the captain's voice echoed through the room. "They're not remnants. They're not survivors. There's something new, and they're watching us." The holographic display shifted, showing the mysterious fleet captured by the Sentinel sensors. The room grew colder as everyone stared at the image. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire felt fear. Farvak clenched his fists. "Prepare the fleet. The dead zone is no longer dead." Whispers of humanity. The Galactic Empire had always believed it knew everything about the galaxy. Every species cataloged, every rebel crushed, every mystery solved. But the fleet that emerged from the dead zone was unlike anything they had ever seen, and with its appearance came whispers that began to spread through the Empire's vast domains. The whispers of humanity. In the capital city of Alturas Prime, deep within the great library of galactic archives, scholar Ilnara was poring over ancient, forbidden records. Ilnara was a historian, one of the few who dared to question the Empire's carefully constructed version of the past. Her research had long been ignored by the High Council, until now. She sat alone in a dimly lit room, surrounded by stacks of dusty Davis slates and crumbling scrolls. The holographic images from the dead zone flickered on a small screen beside her, showing the sleek, angular ships that had humiliated the Empire's scouting party. "There's something familiar about them," she murmured to herself, her fingers tapping on an old slate. The records told stories of a forgotten species, a name buried under centuries of censorship and decay. Humanity. The Empire's official stance was that humanity had been a minor, unremarkable species that disappeared after a failed rebellion centuries ago. But the more Ilnara read, the more she doubted that story. "They didn't vanish," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and awe. "They retreated." According to the ancient texts, humanity had once been one of the most ambitious and dangerous species in the galaxy. They were explorers, inventors, and warriors, always pushing beyond their limits. When the Empire tried to conquer them, humanity fought back with unmatched ferocity. But after years of relentless war, they had suddenly disappeared. Where did they go? Ilnara wondered aloud. As if in answer, a chill ran down her spine. The dead zone. It had always been a forbidden place, a vast expanse of space where ships disappeared without explanation. What if humanity had gone there, not to die, but to rebuild? She looked back at the holographic images of the mysterious fleet, the design of the ships, the formation, the precision. It all pointed to one thing: humanity was alive, and they were far more powerful than anyone had imagined. On the far side of the galaxy, aboard the flagship of the mysterious fleet, Admiral Jareth Kane stood on the bridge of the Eclipse. He was a tall, imposing figure with sharp features and piercing gray eyes. His uniform was sleek and black, adorned with subtle symbols that hinted at humanity's storied past. "Status report," Kane said, his voice calm but commanding. "We've tested their defenses," replied Commander Lyra Voss, standing at his side. The Imperial scouting ship was no match for even our smallest weapon systems. Kane nodded. "As expected, they've grown complacent in their dominance. They think their empire is eternal." "And what do we think?" Voss asked, a faint smirk on her lips. We think they're wrong, Kane said, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the Empire's core worlds. For 3 centuries, we've waited in the shadows. We've rebuilt, evolved, and prepared. And now we'll show them the price of their arrogance. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's advanced systems. The crew knew the stakes. This wasn't just about survival. It was about vengeance, justice, and reclaiming their place among the stars. Do you think they remember us, Admiral? Voss asked after a moment. They'll remember soon enough, Kane replied. Send the next message. Let them know who we are. At the same time, in the Imperial Palace, the High Council was in chaos. Reports of the encounter at the Dead Zone had leaked, and rumors were spreading like wildfire. Citizens whispered of an ancient enemy returned, of a fleet so powerful it could challenge the Empire itself. General Rallner was furious. We cannot allow this humanity to gain a foothold. If they've been hiding in the Dead Zone, they've likely built entire worlds. We must strike now with everything we have. Farvok, the Supreme Counselor, was more cautious. And what if we fail? Do you think the people will still follow us if they see our fleets burned and scattered? Rallner slammed his fist on the table. The people will follow strength, Counselor. We must remind them why we rule. But before Farvok could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. Perhaps they already have, said Ilnara, stepping into the chamber uninvited. Her arms were filled with ancient scrolls and data slates. The guards moved to stop her, but she held her ground. Who is this? Rallner growled. She's a scholar, Farvok said, waving the guards away. One who has spent too much time reading old legends. Speak quickly, Ilnara. What do you know of this fleet? Ilnara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the intimidating presence of the Empire's leaders. I know they are human. I know they are stronger than we ever believed. And I know why they have returned. The council chamber fell silent as she unrolled one of the scrolls. It depicted an ancient battle. Human ships clashing with Imperial forces, their designs eerily similar to the fleet from the Dead Zone. They don't just want to fight us, Ilnara continued. They want revenge. And if what I've read is true, they will not stop until the Empire itself is ash. The room erupted in chaos, but Farvok's voice cut through it like a blade. Enough. If humanity has truly returned, then we must prepare for the greatest war this galaxy has ever seen. Assemble the fleets, call for reinforcements from every system, and find their homeworld. As the counselors scrambled to follow his orders, Farvok turned to Ilnara. You've studied them. Tell me, scholar, what are their weaknesses? Ilnara hesitated, her voice faltering for the first time. I don't think they have any. In the cold void of space, the human fleet continued to advance. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Admiral Kane watched as his ships moved with deadly precision. Let the galaxy tremble, he said softly. Humanity has returned. First contact. Humanity returns. The Galactic Empire's response was swift. A fleet of Imperial warships, led by the seasoned Admiral Karthos, was dispatched to the edge of the Dead Zone. It was a show of strength, a declaration of dominance, and a reminder to the galaxy that no threat could challenge the Empire. Or so they thought. Admiral Karthos stood on the bridge of the Eviscerator, the flagship of the Imperial fleet. A towering man with an air of unshakable confidence, Karthos had commanded countless campaigns, crushing rebellions and exterminating threats. But as he stared out at the expanse of the Dead Zone, unease gnawed at him. Admiral, we've reached the coordinates, announced the ship's navigator. The Eviscerator and its escort ships floated in the stillness of space, their polished hulls gleaming under distant starlight. Scan the area, Karthos ordered. Let's see what these ghosts are made of. The ship's sensors hummed, but the results were disappointing. The scanners detected nothing. No ships, no debris, not even the faintest energy signature. The void ahead was cold and lifeless. Another wild tale, scoffed Lieutenant Prax, Karthos' second in command. "The Council is growing paranoid. We should leave this cursed place." But before Karthos could reply, a faint blip appeared on the radar. Then another, and another. The bridge crew froze as dozens of signals began to light up the screen, forming an intricate web around the Imperial fleet. "Admiral, contacts closing in," shouted the sensor officer. "Unknown vessels, stealth technology bypassing our scans." Karthos' voice cut through the rising panic. "Calm yourselves. Bring them on screen." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the intruders. Sleek, angular ships emerged from the shadows of the dead zone, their hulls shimmering as if they were made from living metal. They moved in perfect formation, like predators circling their prey. "They don't look like pirates," Prax muttered, his bravado fading. "They're not," Karthos said grimly. He straightened his uniform and turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel." The officer nodded, and Karthos stepped forward. His voice was steady, commanding. "This is Admiral Karthos of the Galactic Empire. You are trespassing in restricted space. Identify yourselves immediately, or you will be fired upon." For a moment, there was only silence. Then the view screen shifted, revealing a human figure standing on the bridge of the lead ship. The man was tall, his features sharp and calculating, his uniform dark and unmarked. He radiated an aura of calm power. "This is Admiral Jareth Kane of the human fleet," the man said, his voice deep and deliberate. "You are the trespassers. This space is no longer yours." The bridge of the Eviscerator erupted in murmurs. Humanity, the species the Empire had written off as extinct. Impossible. Karthos narrowed his eyes. Humanity has been gone for centuries. You're either imposters or remnants of a dead race. Kane tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "Centuries in your shadow, Admiral. Centuries of rebuilding. We are neither imposters nor remnants. We are the future." Karthos' jaw tightened. "You are outnumbered. Surrender now, and I will show mercy." Kane's expression hardened. "Mercy? From the empire that burned our worlds and enslaved our people? No, Admiral. It is you who should beg for mercy." With that, the transmission cut. The human ships began to move. The first salvo was devastating. The human fleet opened fire with weapons the Empire had never seen before. Brilliant lances of energy streaked through space, striking the Imperial ships with pinpoint accuracy. Shields that had withstood countless battles faltered under the onslaught. The Eviscerator rocked violently as a blast struck its side. Sparks flew, and alarms blared across the bridge. "Return fire," Karthos shouted. "All ships, engage." The Imperial fleet unleashed a barrage of plasma cannons and torpedoes, but the human ships danced through the chaos with unmatched agility. Their maneuvers were precise, almost organic, as if the ships themselves were alive. The Empire's weapons seemed clumsy in comparison. One by one, the Imperial vessels fell. The Eviscerator's escorts were reduced to flaming wrecks, their hulks drifting aimlessly in the void. The bridge of the Eviscerator was in chaos, officers shouting over one another as the ship struggled to hold its ground. Karthos gritted his teeth. "Focus fire on their flagship. We'll cut off the head of the snake." The Eviscerator unleashed its full arsenal on Kane's ship, the Eclipse, but the human flagship seemed to anticipate every move. It weaved through the storm of fire, its weapons blazing with terrifying precision. Then the killing blow came. A massive beam of energy erupted from the Eclipse, slicing through the Eviscerator's hull. The Imperial flagship shuddered as explosions ripped through its decks. Karthos was thrown to the ground, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Admiral, we have to retreat," Prax yelled, helping Karthos to his feet. Karthos' pride burned, but he knew the truth. They were outmatched. "Order the retreat," he said through gritted teeth. "Signal the fleet. Fall back." As the surviving Imperial ships limped away, the human fleet did not pursue. They watched in silence, their victory absolute. Back on the Eclipse, Admiral Kane stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The battlefield was littered with the wreckage of Imperial ships, a testament to humanity's resurgence. "Send a message to the Imperial capital," Kane said. "Let them know who we are. And let them know this is just the beginning." A comms officer nodded and transmitted a simple message, one that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity has returned, and the Empire will fall. The Empire strikes back. The Galactic Empire was wounded, but it was far from defeated. News of the devastating loss at the Dead Zone spread like wildfire, shaking the confidence of its citizens and emboldening whispers of rebellion across distant colonies. Yet, in the Imperial Palace on Alteris Prime, defeat was not an option. Supreme Counselor Tharvok stood before a massive, glowing star map, his face etched with tension. Around him, the High Council murmured nervously, their voices a mix of fear and anger. Admiral Carthos' failure has emboldened this so-called human fleet. General Rallner growled, slamming his fist on the table. "We cannot afford another humiliation. The galaxy must see the Empire's strength." Tharvok raised a hand to silence the room. "Strength is not enough. Humanity has had centuries to rebuild. Their weapons are beyond our comprehension, and their tactics are unsettlingly precise. We need more than brute force. We need strategy." "Strategy," Rallner sneered. "They have declared war on us. What more strategy is needed than to crush them beneath the full weight of our fleets?" A soft voice interrupted the heated exchange. Scholar Ilnara stepped forward, holding a small data slate. "If you charge in blindly, you will lose," she said, her tone firm despite the hostile glares of the Council. "Humanity has been waiting for this moment. They've studied us, adapted to our weaknesses. They are prepared for a direct assault." Tharvok eyed her curiously. "And what would you suggest?" "Scholar." Ilnara placed the slate on the table, projecting a holographic map of the Dead Zone. "Humanity's strength lies in the Dead Zone. It's not just a location. It's their fortress. If we want to defeat them, we must draw them out." The room fell silent as the Council studied the map. Tharvok's eyes narrowed. "How?" Meanwhile, in the depths of the Dead Zone, Admiral Kane sat in the war room aboard the Eclipse. The room was dark, illuminated only by holographic displays of the Empire's core worlds and fleet movements. Around him stood his most trusted commanders, each with a hardened resolve forged over centuries of struggle. "Our scouts report increased activity along the Empire's borders," Commander Liravos said, pointing to several systems on the map. "They're amassing fleets near the Eridan sector, likely preparing for a counterattack." Kane nodded, his gaze cold and calculating. "They'll come for us, but not here. Tharvok isn't a fool. He knows the Dead Zone is a death trap." Voss smirked. "Do we let them come, or do we take the fight to them?" Kane leaned forward, his voice calm but laced with steel. "We've waited too long to remain in the shadows. Let them think they have the upper hand. They will discover the truth when it's too late." The Empire's plan began to take shape. A massive fleet was assembled, its size dwarfing the one led by Carthos. Over 500 warships, including dreadnoughts and carriers, prepared for a coordinated assault. But this was no blind attack. Tharvok had devised a ruse. The fleet would feign an invasion of the Dead Zone, sending small detachments into its outer regions to provoke humanity. Meanwhile, the bulk of the Empire's forces would lie in wait, hidden within a nebula near the Tarsus system, ready to ambush the human fleet when they emerge. Tharvok's voice boomed across the war room as he addressed the assembled admirals. "Humanity's strength lies in their arrogance. They believe they are untouchable. We will use that against them. When they step out of their shadow, we will strike with overwhelming force." The plan seemed flawless, but the Empire had underestimated one thing: humanity's ability to anticipate their every move. In the Dead Zone, humanity was already watching. Hidden observation drones tracked every movement of the Imperial fleet, their advanced sensors undetectable by even the Empire's best technology. Kane studied the reports with a faint smile. "They think they're clever," he said, leaning back in his chair. "They want to draw us out, to make us overconfident, but they don't understand who they're dealing with." "What's our move, Admiral?" Voss asked. "We'll give them what they want," Kane said, his smile widening. "But on our terms." The Imperial fleet advanced into the dead zone, their smaller detachments probing its edges. They found nothing but silence, the eerie void stretching endlessly before them. Each step deeper into the dead zone brought a growing sense of unease among the crews. On the bridge of the lead ship, Oblivion, Admiral Dreskar frowned as he scanned the reports. No resistance, no activity. "It's as if they've vanished. Perhaps they've fled," offered a junior officer. "Cowards hiding in the shadows." "No," Dreskar said, shaking his head. "They're watching, waiting." As if on cue, the alarms blared. A swarm of human ships emerged from the darkness, their sleek forms glinting ominously. The Imperial ships scrambled to respond, but the human fleet didn't attack. Instead, they encircled the Imperial detachment, cutting them off from the rest of the fleet. "Admiral Dreskar, we're surrounded," a panicked officer cried. Dreskar's voice was steady. "Hold your ground. Reinforcements are on their way." But the reinforcements never arrived. The Empire's ambush fleet, hidden in the Tarsus Nebula, was itself ambushed. Humanity had anticipated the ruse, deploying cloaked vessels to track the Imperial fleet's movements. As the Empire's ships prepared to spring their trap, they found themselves under attack from all sides. The Eclipse led the charge, its weapons carving through the Imperial lines with surgical precision. Admiral Kane's voice rang out across the comms. "Did you think we wouldn't see this coming? Your arrogance blinds you, just as it always has. This galaxy will no longer bow to your tyranny." The battle was swift and decisive. The Empire's fleets, caught off guard and outmaneuvered, were decimated. By the time the survivors retreated, the message was clear. Humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. In the aftermath, Kane stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, watching as the last remnants of the Imperial fleet disappeared into hyperspace. "They will come again," Voss said, standing beside him. "Let them," Kane replied, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Every time they come, we will be stronger. And soon, they'll realize this is not their galaxy anymore. The trap is sprung." The Galactic Empire was bleeding. Its fleets, once the terror of the galaxy, had been humiliated in the dead zone. Fear spread among the core worlds, and whispers of humanity's resurgence grew louder. But the Empire was far from finished. If humanity was a storm, the Empire was a mountain, battered but unyielding. And mountains, when shaken, could still crush anything in their path. In the Imperial capital, Supreme Counselor Tharvok's patience had run thin. He stood in the war chamber, surrounded by holograms of the galaxy and the remnants of his admirals. The losses in the Tarsus Nebula had been catastrophic, but they had revealed something crucial. Humanity's tactics relied on precision, ambush, and their intimate knowledge of the dead zone. "They fight like predators," General Rallner said, his voice low and bitter. "They lure us in, strike from the shadows, and disappear before we can retaliate." Tharvok stared at the star map, his reptilian fingers tapping the edge of the table. "Predators can be trapped. They rely on confidence, on the belief that they control the hunt. We must turn that confidence against them." "How?" asked Rallner, his impatience clear. Tharvok gestured to the map, highlighting a cluster of unremarkable systems near the dead zone. "Here, the Iridum cluster. It has no strategic value to us, but it lies along a key trade route. Humanity will see it as an opportunity, an easy target to disrupt our economy and weaken our influence." Rallner frowned. "You want to use the cluster as bait?" Tharvok nodded. "We'll make it appear poorly defended, but in reality, we'll fill it with our best stealth fleet. When humanity strikes, we'll surround them. They will have no escape. Meanwhile, in the dead zone, humanity was already watching. Kane's fleet had been monitoring Imperial movements, and the Iridium cluster caught their attention. It was an obvious target, too obvious. Admiral Kane stood in the dimly lit war room aboard the Eclipse, the holographic map of Iridium glowing before him. Around him, his senior officers studied the data with sharp focus. "They're baiting us," Kane said, his voice calm. "This is no simple trade route defense. They want us to strike." Commander Lyra Voss smirked. "So we spring the trap." Kane turned to her, his expression unreadable. "We spring their trap, but we'll lay one of our own." The officers leaned in as Kane outlined the plan. Humanity's fleet would attack the Iridium cluster as expected, but only a fraction of their forces would engage. The rest would remain hidden, using advanced cloaking technology to surround the Imperial fleet. "When they think they have us," Kane said, his voice cold and deliberate, "we'll close the jaws of our trap." The Iridium cluster was a collection of quiet, sparsely populated systems. Imperial patrol ships floated idly near asteroid fields, their movements seemingly lax. Small outposts dotted the planets, broadcasting signals of vulnerability. It was a picture-perfect target. Humanity struck without warning. A dozen sleek warships emerged from hyperspace, their engines blazing as they moved with deadly precision. The first Imperial outpost fell within minutes, its defenses overwhelmed by humanity's superior firepower. On the bridge of the Oblivion, the Empire's lead stealth dreadnought, Admiral Dreskar watched with a grim smile. "They've taken the bait." His fleet, hidden within the system's asteroid fields and planetary shadows, began to emerge. Hundreds of ships decloaked, their massive forms surrounding humanity's smaller fleet. Imperial weapons powered up, and shields shimmered as the trap sprung shut. "Signal all ships," Dreskar commanded. "Engage. Leave no survivors." For a moment, it seemed the Empire had finally gained the upper hand. Humanity's smaller fleet appeared to be cornered, their ships maneuvering desperately to avoid the Imperial onslaught. Explosions lit the void as Imperial weapons struck their targets, tearing through several human vessels. On the bridge of the Eclipse, hidden just beyond the system's edge, Kane watched the battle unfold. His expression remained calm, his sharp eyes scanning the tactical display. "They're fully committed," Voss said, her voice tinged with anticipation. Kane nodded. Now, a signal was sent, and the void around the Iridium cluster came alive. Humanity's hidden fleet, twice the size of the one engaged in the battle, decloaked with terrifying precision. The Eclipse led the charge, its weapons blazing as it tore into the rear of the Imperial formation. The Imperial fleet, once the hunters, became the hunted. Caught between two waves of human ships, their formation crumbled. The Eclipse unleashed its devastating main weapon, a beam of energy so powerful it split the Oblivion in two, silencing Admiral Dreskar and his command staff in an instant. Panic spread through the Imperial ranks. The coordinated response they had prepared was useless against humanity's overwhelming tactics. Ships attempted to retreat, but humanity's fleet was relentless, cutting off escape routes and picking off stragglers. By the time the battle ended, the Iridium cluster was a graveyard of Imperial ships. Humanity had not only survived the trap, they had turned it into a resounding victory. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Kane stood silently, watching the wreckage drift through space. His officers celebrated quietly, their faces a mixture of relief and grim determination. "They underestimated us again," Voss said, her tone almost pitying. "They won't make that mistake a third time," Kane replied. "And neither will we. Prepare the fleet. The Empire is on the defensive now, and we're going to press the advantage." Back in the Imperial capital, the High Council was in shambles. Tharvok stood alone in the war chamber, staring at the star map of the Iridium cluster. His plan had failed spectacularly, and the consequences were devastating. Rallner stormed into the room, his face flushed with rage. "This is a disaster. They've destroyed our best fleet, and now they're advancing into our core territories." Farvok's voice was quiet but filled with menace. "They forced us into a corner. That was their mistake." Rallner frowned. "What do you mean?" Farvok turned, his eyes cold and calculating. "If they want a war, we'll give them one. No more subtlety. No more traps. We'll unleash the full might of the Empire." Rallner hesitated. "And if that fails?" Farvok's expression darkened. "Then the galaxy burns. The Leviathan awakens." The Galactic Empire was unraveling. Across the galaxy, cracks appeared in its once unshakable foundation. Distant colonies whispered of rebellion, and fleets that once ruled with impunity now limped back to their bases, battered and broken. Humanity, once a forgotten footnote in history, had become a storm sweeping across the stars. But the Empire still had its secrets, and in the heart of the capital, Supreme Counselor Farvok prepared to unleash its most dangerous one. In the depths of Alturas Prime, beneath the bustling city and shimmering crystal towers, lay a hidden facility. The air was thick with the hum of energy and the acrid scent of coolant as scientists and engineers worked tirelessly around a colossal structure. It was an ancient weapon, a relic of a forgotten era, buried deep within the planet long before the Empire rose to power. They called it the Leviathan. A massive warship, larger than any dreadnought, its hull was forged from metals no longer found in the galaxy. Its weapon systems were unlike anything the Empire had ever deployed. Technology so advanced it bordered on myth. For centuries, it had been dormant, its secrets locked away. Now, with the Empire on the brink of collapse, Farvok had ordered its activation. General Rallner stood beside Farvok, staring in awe at the towering vessel. "I thought this was just a legend," he muttered. Farvok's voice was cold. "Legends are born from truth, General. This ship was built long before the Empire, by a civilization even we don't fully understand. If humanity thinks they can defeat us, they'll face the wrath of the Leviathan." "But it's untested," Rallner said, his doubt creeping through. "If it malfunctions." "It won't," Farvok snapped. "Humanity has underestimated us at every turn. Now, we'll show them what true power looks like." Meanwhile, deep in the dead zone, Admiral Jareth Kane stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. Humanity's victories had been decisive, but the Empire was far from beaten. The core worlds were heavily fortified, and rumors of a secret weapon had reached his ears. "Do we have confirmation?" Kane asked, turning to Commander Voss. She nodded, her expression grim. "Our spies intercepted fragments of communications from Alturas Prime. They're activating something called the Leviathan. Details are sparse, but it's massive. Ancient tech, dangerous." Kane's eyes narrowed. "And they're bringing it to the fight." "Most likely," Voss replied. "If they think it'll turn the tide, they'll deploy it soon." Kane stared out at the stars, his mind racing. Humanity had rebuilt in secrecy for centuries, perfecting their ships and strategies. But even they had limits. If this Leviathan was as powerful as the whispers suggested, it could crush them in a single engagement. "What's the plan?" Voss asked. "We adapt," Kane said, his voice steady. "Every weapon has a weakness. We'll find theirs." It wasn't long before the Leviathan made its debut. The massive warship emerged from hyperspace near the contested Drillos system, a critical trade hub that humanity had recently seized. Its arrival was heralded by a massive shockwave, sending ripples through space that disrupted communications and navigation systems. The Leviathan dwarfed every other ship in the sector. Its hull shimmered with an eerie dark energy, and its weapon systems glowed with an ominous red light. Imperial ships flanked it, emboldened by the presence of the ancient war machine. On the surface of Drillos Prime, civilians and resistance fighters alike looked to the skies in terror as the Leviathan's shadow blotted out the stars. Its main cannon charged, a sphere of crackling energy forming at its center. Moments later, A beam of raw destruction tore through the planet's outer defenses, reducing them to ash. From the bridge of the Eclipse, Kane watched the devastation on his tactical display. His fleet was hidden in a nearby asteroid field, cloaked and waiting. The sight of the Leviathan sent a chill down his spine, but his resolve remained unshaken. "They're trying to intimidate us," Voss said. "It's working." Kane didn't look away from the display. "Let them think they have the upper hand. They don't know what's coming." Humanity's counterattack was swift and brutal. Kane's fleet emerged from the asteroid field, their ships weaving through the chaos with surgical precision. The smaller Imperial escorts were quickly overwhelmed, their formations crumbling under the relentless assault. But the Leviathan was another story. As humanity's ships focused their fire on the massive warship, its shields absorbed the attacks effortlessly. It retaliated with devastating blasts, its weapons tearing through humanity's fleet with terrifying efficiency. On the bridge of the Eclipse, alarms blared as the ship shuddered under a near miss from the Leviathan's secondary cannons. "Our weapons aren't breaking through," Voss said, frustration in her voice. "If we don't find a way to stop it." "We will," Kane interrupted. "Send the signal. Activate Project Horizon." Voss hesitated, her eyes widening. "Are you sure? It's untested." Kane's expression hardened. "So is the Leviathan. Do it." Project Horizon was humanity's trump card, a last-ditch weapon designed in secret. A massive vessel, larger than even the Eclipse, it had been hidden deep within the dead zone, cloaked and waiting for the right moment. As the Leviathan unleashed another wave of destruction, Project Horizon emerged from hyperspace. The ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a hybrid of human ingenuity and ancient technology salvaged from the dead zone. Its hull was a gleaming silver, its form sleek yet imposing. The Leviathan turned its massive guns toward the newcomer, but Horizon was faster. It unleashed a pulse of energy that disrupted the Leviathan's shields, leaving it vulnerable for the first time. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Kane gave the order. "All ships, concentrate fire. Bring it down." Humanity's fleet surged forward, their combined firepower hammering the Leviathan. The ancient warship fought back fiercely, its weapons carving through the void, but cracks began to appear in its hull. Finally, with a deafening explosion that rippled across the system, the Leviathan collapsed in on itself, consumed by the very energy it had once wielded. As silence fell over the battlefield, Kane stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, his gaze fixed on the remnants of the Leviathan. "They thought it would save them," Voss said, her voice soft. Kane nodded. "Now they know nothing can." The galaxy had witnessed the Empire's greatest weapon fall, and with it, the tide of the war shifted irrevocably. Humanity had proven that even the oldest legends could be broken. But Kane knew the war was far from over. The Empire would not give up so easily. "Prepare the fleet," he said, turning to his officers. "We're taking the fight to Alturas Prime." The galactic shift. The Leviathan's destruction echoed across the galaxy like a thunderclap. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Empire's invincibility had been shattered, not by a coalition of worlds or a rising rebellion, but by a species it had thought extinct, humanity. The balance of power was shifting, and the Empire's iron grip on the galaxy was loosening. In the Imperial Palace on Alturas Prime, Supreme Counselor Tharvok stood before the High Council. The chamber, once a symbol of control and order, was now filled with tension and dissent. Holograms of distant worlds displayed riots and uprisings. Species once subjugated by the Empire were rising, emboldened by humanity's victories. "We cannot let this continue," General Rallner shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "Humanity has turned the galaxy against us. If we lose Alturas, the Empire will fall." Tharvok's voice was calm but cold. "The Empire is already falling, General. The question is whether we will collapse with it or reshape it." The council erupted in chaos, arguments flying across the chamber. Rallner demanded an all-out defense of the capital, calling for every available fleet. Others, more cautious, suggested negotiating with humanity, though their voices were quickly drowned out. Tharvok raised a hand, silencing the room. They will come here. Humanity has proven they will stop at nothing. We will prepare for war. But if the battle turns against us, we must be ready to negotiate. If the Empire cannot win, it must survive. Rallner glared at him. Negotiate. With them, you would hand over the galaxy to savages. Tharvok's eyes narrowed. I would do whatever is necessary to ensure the Empire endures, even if it means surrendering control. Humanity's fleet gathered at the edge of Imperial space, a vast armada of sleek warships brimming with power and purpose. At its center was the Eclipse, flanked by Project Horizon and a swarm of smaller vessels. For Admiral Jareth Kane, this was the culmination of centuries of preparation. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Kane stood before his officers, the holographic map of Alteris Prime glowing before him. The Imperial capital was a fortress, surrounded by planetary defenses and an immense fleet. But Kane didn't seem concerned. They'll throw everything they have at us, Commander Lyra Voss said, studying the map. Their fleets, their planetary defenses, everything. They'll fight like an empire desperate to survive, Kane replied. But desperation makes them predictable. And predictable is vulnerable. He turned to his officers, his voice steady. This isn't just about Alteris. This is about breaking the Empire. When they see their capital fall, the galaxy will know their reign is over. We're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for everyone who has ever suffered under their rule. The officers nodded, their resolve unshaken. The fleet began its final preparations, and Kane gave the order. Set course for Alteris Prime. The battle for Alteris Prime was the largest the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their sleek ships gliding through the void with purpose. The Imperial fleet, vast and formidable, awaited them, its ships forming a massive defensive wall around the planet. The first salvo came from the Empire, a coordinated barrage of plasma and missile fire that lit up the darkness. Humanity's ships moved with precision, weaving through the chaos and returning fire with devastating accuracy. Imperial ships exploded in fiery bursts, their formations crumbling under the relentless assault. On the surface of Alteris Prime, the city's towering spires trembled as planetary defense cannons roared to life, targeting humanity's fleet. But Project Horizon unleashed a series of focused energy pulses, disabling the cannons before they could do significant damage. Inside the Imperial Palace, Tharvok watched the battle unfold on a massive holographic display. The room was silent except for the hum of the display and the distant rumble of the cannons. "We're losing," Rallner said, his voice low. Tharvok didn't respond immediately. His gaze was fixed on the Eclipse, which loomed like a specter over the battlefield. Finally, he spoke. "Prepare a diplomatic channel. If we cannot win, we must survive." Rallner's face twisted in anger. "You would surrender." "I would adapt," Tharvok said coldly. "That is why I lead, General, and why you only follow." On the bridge of the Eclipse, the battle raged around them. Kane watched as the Imperial fleet faltered, their lines breaking apart under the relentless pressure of humanity's assault. "Admiral," Voss said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "the Imperial Palace is sending a transmission. They want to talk." Kane's expression didn't change. "Put it through." The holographic image of Tharvok appeared, his reptilian features calm despite the devastation around him. "Admiral Kane," he began, his voice steady, "you have proven your strength. The galaxy trembles at your fleet. But strength alone does not build a future." Kane's eyes narrowed. "The future isn't yours to decide, Counselor. Your empire is done." Tharvok inclined his head slightly. "Perhaps, but an empire that adapts can endure. Humanity has shown it is more than we imagined. I propose a new order. An alliance, one where humanity and the Empire share power. guiding the galaxy together. Kane's officers exchanged uneasy glances, but Kane's expression remained cold. "Why should we trust you?" "Because the alternative is ashes," Farvok said simply. "For both of us." After a tense pause, Kane gave his response. "We'll accept nothing less than total equality. No species beneath another. No more tyranny. If you can agree to that, the fighting ends." Farvok nodded slowly. "Then let us rebuild the galaxy together." The surrender of the Empire sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw hope. Hope for a future not ruled by fear, but by unity. Humanity had not only risen from the ashes, but had reshaped the stars themselves. On the bridge of the eclipse, Kane stood watching Altaurus Prime grow smaller as the fleet moved away. Voss approached him, her voice quiet. "Do you think they'll keep their word?" "They'll try," Kane replied. "And if they don't?" He turned, his gaze hard. "We'll remind them why the galaxy trembles at the name humanity." The galaxy had changed forever. The Empire had fallen, and humanity had taken its place, not as conquerors, but as leaders of a new age. The stars belonged to everyone now, and the galaxy would never forget the name of those who had reclaimed them. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same.